Hey guys, Mark from Enchantment of Eternity here. As you may know, or those familiar with my channel may know, I'm trying to limit the amount of videos I do, so I'm not doing a review of The Walking Dead every single week. And so I kind of like choose between which show I want to review, Humans or The Walking Dead. So I decided to do Humans this week because I had more to say about it. But I decided to do one of these live impromptu videos just to share a few thoughts about this last night's episode of The Walking Dead because, yeah, these live videos don't take as much time or effort and tend to be not as good as quality as well. But whatever, I just spat out some thoughts I had on last night's episode. So it was probably my favorite of the three so far this season, which isn't saying much because I'm not really liking this season. And that's another reason why I'm not really reviewing it every week, because so many fans of The Walking Dead don't want to hear what I have to say about it because I'm kind of poo-pooing all over this show. But to be fair, like, I don't know, to me, I just don't understand how a lot of people say, I didn't like the cliffhanger, but I like the premiere. To me, I don't see the disconnect because the cliffhanger was resolved in the premiere. So if the cliffhanger is bad, then for me, by reasoning, the premiere is bad as well, which is why I hate the premiere. But anyway, yeah, I didn't do AJ in the chat here. So I didn't do a reaction to last week's episode either. I didn't touch on so I might touch on last week's episode a little bit. Last week's episode was with where they met Ezekiel, and I don't know, it seems to me like I was not as big on that episode as many people were. I liked King Ezekiel. He's a pretty cool character, and seeing Carol's reaction to him was pretty cool, and the setup that they're setting the whole thing up. But it was mostly boring. I mostly found the episode to be boring. I mostly found it to be filler, just like I knew it would. And I'd say the exact same thing about this week's episode, The Cell. But to me, it was slightly more interesting because you got more into Dwight's character, and the show did something I didn't think it would. It took the character of Dwight and made him sympathetic. And I kind of talked to people from the comics that kind of know that they're sort of leaning, they were going to go that way, but I was having a hard time believing that they could actually sell it in a way that would make me give any shit about Dwight, because I hated that character after seeing what he did to whatever, when he went after the people in last season 6. So I hated him, but the episode actually made me sort of sympathize with him, which surprised me. And I think they did a damn good job of it. So I'm all about giving credit where credit's due. And I think they did a good job in last night's episode of making Dwight more sympathetic. So it is sort of drawing me back in. But it made me think to the episode where he was first introduced last year in season 6, which I think was in the first half of season 6. I'm still don't really buy it. They made a lot more sense once they explained it here in this episode, but I'm still not really buying their split decision to all of a sudden go back to Negan, especially now that we hear what happened, that Negan threatened to kill Dwight. Is like, duh. And the only way Dwight was able to stay alive was because his wife agreed to be Negan's wife. So weren't they expecting that to happen when they went back to Negan? So it still doesn't make any sense why they were running away from Negan, and they were doing a good job of it too, apparently, according to what Negan said in this episode, because he was like, oh, we sent all these 100 out, so we're looking forever for him, we couldn't find him. So why all of a sudden steal Daryl's shit and go back to Negan? I suppose it's because his wife's sister died, and she was the whole reason they were escaping, and so with her dead, there's really no reason to be on the run, but still, they know Negan. They should know that there'll be dire consequences, that he's not going to be like, oh, boys will be boys, that he's going to fucking kill you if you go back or steal your wife. So it still seems like a totally idiotic move for him to go back, even though I know they're trying to play up in this episode that, oh, he's so beat, he thinks that everything's hopeless. Then why escape in the first place? That doesn't match up with why he left in the first place. Since he was already on the run, he was already doing a good job at it. It still makes no sense to me. It seems like it was done for plot convenience. I'm sorry. But anyway, that aside, I did like the reveal of Dwight's wife and whatever, and the way she was sympathetic to Daryl. So that's why I'd call it my favorite episode of the season thus far. But to be clear, and I'm not going to wait till the end of this video to reveal this, but I give this episode a 6 out of 10. So 6 out of 10 being the best you got isn't that really great, because I did feel that this episode was too slow, just like episode 2. And I knew, like, after the premiere, I knew we were going to get a couple filler episodes. Now, I don't know if it's fair to call these episodes filler. I think it's maybe setup is a better word than filler, but they were stretched out and slow, and the pacing's all off. A lot of people have been pointing this out on other videos, that the pacing of the show is off by having one whole episode about Carol and Morgan, one whole episode about Daryl. We haven't seen Rick's group since episode 1. And this reminds me of the show Lost. Actually, this episode reminded me a lot of Lost, of the season 3 premiere of Lost, where if you've seen that show, they had this group called the Others, who actually remind me so much of the Saviors. Where they kidnapped the main character, Jack, Kate, and Sawyer. They kidnapped them, and the premiere of season 3 just had Jack, Kate, and Sawyer. And then the second episode showed this other group who were off on the boat, and then the third episode showed the group back at camp. So they did that same sort of format that The Walking Dead is doing now, where they're showing one group for one episode, one group for another, and one group for another. And for Lost, everyone bitched and complained about it and hated that format, and so Lost never did that format again. So it seems odd to me that Walking Dead is doing a format that Lost has already proven is not fan-friendly, that people do not like. Also, in particular, the whole thing, the episode of Jack being imprisoned by the Others, that's basically what this episode was with Daryl. He was imprisoned by the Saviors, and they were trying to break him in the same way the Others were trying to break Jack. So to me, this felt like just a rehash of something I've already seen. And I would say that's what the whole Walking Dead has turned into, kind of a rehash of something I've already seen. Okay, now let's see what people are saying in the chat. Yeah, Gaza says not really loving the last 2 episodes. Love your videos, man. Well, thank you so much. AJ says, I hope Dwight chokes on his next sandwich. Yeah, I kind of agree. And Gaza says 6 out of 10 is being generous. Haha. Oh yeah, and Chase says the music was catchy. That's about it. The music, I actually like the fact that they were using music to torture Daryl, because that was a nice little touch in my opinion, because that's what they do in like Guantanamo Bay and stuff, and that's actually torturous, like blasting loud music when you're trying to sleep and repeating the same song over again. It's always a joke that, oh, that same song over again, but they actually is torture. So that was a nice touch. But yeah, I don't know, like 6 out of 10 you might think is generous, but I think people were being way too generous to the premiere. I gave it a 3 out of 10, and I'm sticking to that 3 out of 10. I thought the premiere was awful. It was contrived. This wasn't contrived as much, so it didn't bother me, but it was more of, it was slow paced and it was unoriginal. But as I said, I was really impressed with Dwight and how they made me actually sympathize with him, because I didn't think they'd be able to do that. So that's why this episode gets sort of a favorable rating, a 6 out of 10. Whereas last week's episode, a lot of people seemed really in love with it, but I thought it was just okay. I would give that episode a 5 out of 10 because it was boring. And here's the thing about both these episodes is, They're set up. That's all it is. And it's pretty much expected. Like, obviously, they're not going to jump straight into a conflict with the Savior. I mean, because that wouldn't be good storytelling. They have to set things up. But it's predictable. Like, it's exactly what I think would happen. And next week's episode is definitely going to be another setup episode where they're setting up this new dynamic with Rick explaining to the group that Negan's in control. And so it's going to be another. And it's 90 minutes long. To me, it seems like it's going to be 90 stretched out filler. That's what I think it is. And I still can't believe that Robert Kirkman said, oh, there's no filler in the show. The whole show, like 90% of this show is filler. But yeah, they're getting the format wrong. They're getting the pacing wrong. Like, I think how much better these past episodes would be if they did it more like Game of Thrones, where they had the 3 separate storylines, but they switched back. So these past 3 episodes happen concurrently rather than having, oh, this is a Rick episode, this is the Daryl episode, this is the Carol episode. Instead of doing that, having it like switch back between the different storylines. Maybe the premiere could be the same, but they could take episodes 2, 3, and what's going to be 4, because it looks like 4 is going to be entirely in Alexandria. They took those 3 and interplayed them like a Game of Thrones. I think it would work a lot better. I think a lot of people will be more happy. So yeah, it's pacing issues. And that sort of sums up my whole feeling of The Walking Dead as a whole at the moment, is that there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of things that they're doing right, which is why I'm still watching. I'm still interested in it. But there's a lot of things they're doing wrong. Like, there's wasted potential. Like, things could be much better than they were, particularly with the cliffhanger. If they just showed Abraham being killed at the end of season 6, then the show would be awesome. I would be sitting here saying, wow, I love The Walking Dead. All they had to do is show Abraham being killed at the end of season 6, and they would have fixed like 90% of the issues I have with the show currently. And then there's other things like, yeah, if they had the storylines happening concurrently instead of doing this format that Lost already proved does not work, which I don't know why they're doing it again. I mean, I know they've done it before in like season 4, like that second half of season 4 when they're all walking the terminus. That was, I think, Walking Dead at its worst, although it does feature my favorite episode of the show. But other than that episode, it was so boring. It was so boring, and they're doing it again. It seems like, yeah, this shit doesn't learn. But I'm not ready to like quit and throw it away entirely. If they do another gimmick like the cliffhanger, then I probably will. All right, let's see what they're saying in the chat. So Cam says, I thought that we had 2 musical montages in a row at first. Haha. Oh, yeah, that's what I thought as well. I think the musical montage kind of worked in the opening. Let's see. And AJ says, I feel like the cell connected with the audience. AJ said, I suffered with Daryl through Easy Street in the photo of Glenn. Yeah, I agree with you, actually. That's another reason why I give this a favorable rating, because I loved, and this is actually what sets it apart from Lost, because I brought up the Lost episode. At the end of the episode, we see hints that Jack is being broken by the others, whereas in this episode, Daryl is not being broken. He's like saying that, he even says to Dwight, I get why you did it because you have someone to protect, but I have no one to protect. And basically, like, he feels like he'd be dishonoring Glenn if he gave in. So he's kind of the opposite. And I love that touch. I think that was great. So that was another reason why I give it a somewhat favorable rating. But comparing it to Lost again, like the Saviors, I think, are the same as the others. They remind me of a lot of the others, whereas they're this invincible group that seems to have omniscient powers. However, I bought it with the others because they're on this mysterious island that the others have lived on for, centuries, for years, and they knew this island in and out, where these survivors just got there 10 months ago. Whereas with the Saviors, I totally do not buy their omniscient powers. And with the others, they all had this like religious almost devotion to their group, whereas the Saviors are just being coerced out of fear, and they're all unhappy. So I don't buy them. I don't buy the Saviors. So this, to me, hurts the show overall. They played him as too omniscient at the end of season 6, which really annoyed me. And this whole thing that they did this episode with, oh, I'm Negan, that's just dumb. And plus, again, it is so obvious, it's so predictable, it's so clear what they are setting up for. They're setting up for Dwight to turn on Negan, and it's like what they did with Ollie in season 5 of Game of Thrones, with foreshadowing what he would do at the end of the seasons. Beyond obvious. And it's the same thing with last week's episode where they had the saviors like in the conflict with the kingdom, and it's obvious, it's so obvious that they're setting up for a conflict where the kingdom and Alexandra and Hilltop team up together, and then Dwight and people from within will rebel at the same time. See, I haven't read the comics, so I don't know if that's actually the case. I've heard of a thing called All Out War, but I'm not going by the comics. I'm just by what they're showing me on this TV. And from knowing this show, it's just so obvious where they're going with this. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, again, they can't like jump straight into it. They need to set it up. But it seems to me, because we've seen this before in this show, it seems just very too predictable. I don't know. Let's see. Thug Nasty says Daryl will die along with the show. Yeah. AJ says, do you think Daryl could get Holly's death in the comics? No, I don't think Daryl's going to die. I think the show he's got too much plot armor. The show is basically a pussy. They're not going to kill anyone off who's a fan favorite, who's popular. I mean, Glenn, he died in the comics. He was going to die. Everyone's expecting him to die, so he was an easy choice. But they're not going to kill anyone unexpected like Daryl or Rick or Michonne, because the show is a bunch of pussies. And this is another thing that worries me about the show is that, Robert Kirkman, I saw an interview with him. He was saying that, someone asked if the show would go for 9 seasons, and he's like, oh, I don't think we could tell everything we needed to in 9 seasons. So he wants it to go on like The Simpsons. He wants it to go on forever. And I think they've already stretched it out too long. I just can't see my interest any possible way I could remain interested in the show in season 10 or season 11. I don't think there's any way I'm going to last that long. And it's very disheartening knowing that there is no end in sight. Like some other shows like Black Sails and Orphan Black and The Leftovers, where they announce this is going to be the last season and they have an ending in sight. That's actually more comforting, because the showrunners are telling you that we are going to end it on a high note, like Breaking Bad did, and they did an excellent job, and they have an ending in sight. When someone says, oh, we want to go on forever, that's very disheartening. That makes me think that the show's just going to, especially a show like this, which is just so much filler and it just drags and drags. And I can't believe people are praising this show. I don't know. Everyone has different tastes. If you like the show, whatever. But I don't know. I'm not ready to give up on it quite yet. But I was thinking of perhaps it might be more enjoyable if I didn't watch it week to week. If I just waited till the whole season or half season was over and then binged it, maybe I'd enjoy it more that way, because it wouldn't feel so stretched out. I think maybe it kind of hurts it by having this week format. But I'll probably stick with season 7, watching it weekly. I'll see how I feel after season 7. With season 8, I might switch to a binge, or I might give up on the show entirely. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'll probably do one or the other. I'm probably definitely not going to watch it weekly, but I'll stick to the end. Even the second half of season 7, I'll stick to weekly just because I've started it, and I'll stick to it, and so I can do videos like this. Okay, so what is the chat saying? AJ says, I feel like maybe Dwight could try to break Daryl and as punishment, Negan would have Sherry put down Dwight. Nah, I think Dwight's gonna stay alive. I think they're definitely setting this episode set him up to be sort of a character. Doug Nasty said they're completely crazy that Walking Dead will go longer than Game of Thrones. Yes. And Jerome says, "Hey Mark, I didn't see all the episode. Was that episode just Daryl being sad for 45 minutes?" Basically. And yeah, that's what it dragged out. But yeah. So I give it a 6 out of 10. I give last week's episode with the Kingdom, which I don't think is as good as most people are saying. I did like the character of King Ezekiel and his interactions with Carol, but it was way too dragged out, way too slow, boring. So I give that a 5 out of 10, and I give the premiere 3 out of 10. Okay, so that's it. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to waste any more time on The Walking Dead. I will probably do a full-on review of The Walking Dead next week, since it's a 90-minute episode, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I haven't done a proper review of The Walking Dead in a couple weeks, so I might do one next week. But anyway, thanks so much for watching and for my impromptu, just spilling my thoughts for those who are curious to hear it. And I will catch you later.